Hi, I'm Akemi Johnson, and I'm going to read an essay I wrote for a new publication called Off Assignment, and this is from their Letter to a Stranger series. You called the U.S. military bases Sylvan in your note to me, and I'll admit now, I had to look up the definition. Just like a poet, I thought, to use a word like that to describe a military base. You are farther north in Japan, traveling down the fire ring, on a worldwide pilgrimage to climb and write about volcanoes. Had to buy myself a gas mask in the end, you wrote me, but I fumble on. You had contacted me through social media, connected by mutual friends. We made loose plans to meet in Okinawa after you arrived in a week. Okinawa is covered in U.S. bases, a few dozen, and since the end of World War II has seen a stream of Americans make the islands their temporary home. You called your visit a kind of homecoming because you lived on Kadena Air Base as a kid. At 6, 7, 8 years old, it was a tropical paradise to me, you wrote. What's it like now? Not Sylvan, I thought. Your description confused me because the main islands, many bases didn't seem wooded. You wrote that you remembered lots of uncleared brush and forest and old fortress, lots of weird insects. But the bases I knew were manicured and sterile. After you wrote, I'd sit in traffic on Route 58, look through the fences at the wide, empty roads, the flat open expanses, and wonder if forests were hidden in there. Maybe the bases had changed a lot over the past few decades. Maybe your memory was faulty. Maybe to a child, a wood could be conjured from a line of scrawny, government-issued trees. I decided to ask you when we met. I was in Okinawa because I was researching a book, too. About half of my year on the island was over, and lately I'd been feeling lonely and on edge. I lived across the street from a military base, and whenever I got past its gates, when someone signed me in, I was reminded how foreign I was on either side of the fence. I wondered why I had done this to myself, why I had cordoned myself off in a remote area of the globe, severed from family and friends. One night I went to a party on Futenma, the Marine Corps base notorious for its place in the middle of Ginowan City. Surrounded by a squadron of pilots and their wives, I drank and drank and drank, even though I was taking medication that forbade me to drink. The next morning I woke with a ringing in my ears that, I never admit this to anyone, but I'm going to admit it to you, has never fully gone away. Around the time you were scheduled to arrive, I heard you read a poem on NPR. I was standing at the kitchen sink washing dishes and turned off the water to listen. I was impressed and delighted that you had a spot on All Things Considered, that the program had been relayed from Washington, D.C. to the battery radio on my windowsill. Then came horror. Your voice was a recording. I learned that you had gone out to hike a volcano on an island north of Okinawa 3 days earlier and never returned. 80 people, dogs, and helicopters were looking for you. The segment ended, Craig Arnold, lost in Japan. I had to rush to a scheduled tour of the U.S. consulate. A Foreign Service officer assured me the situation was under control. They would find you. They never did. The search team scoured the small island, eventually surmising that a deer trail had led you off the edge of a cliff. They rappelled down that cliff, combed the area below, but didn't find you. Your loved ones were left with searing questions. In her beautiful book, An Elegy to You, your partner Rebecca Lindenberg writes, "What makes a man impossible to find on such a chip of land it's hardly there." We never met and never will, and I'm not here to tell your story. Others have done so in ways detailed and incandescent, and there is, of course, your writing, words that continue to speak. I do want to tell you this. Before I left Okinawa, I visited a small museum outside Futenma, at the end of a dead-end road. I parked along the rusted base fence. No one was around. The cicadas roared, and a large traditional turtle-shaped tomb crouched nearby. I took out my camera and photographed the tomb, the barbed wire curled atop the fence. On the other side, the American side, there was some kind of monument, a craggy white rock framing a black plaque of Japanese writing. I peered at the rock, wondering what it meant, and then I registered the dense, unruly foliage crowding around it, the heavy-leafed branches arching overhead. Of course, I had seen only parts of the bases, the humorless buildings and hamburger joints, but the bases occupied so much space. Of course there were corners, areas like this, undeveloped, left to the subtropics, wild and sylvan. I stood there and thought of the word you had taught me. I thought about going home in a week. I thought about you on the base, 6, 7, 8 years old, amid the trees.